Run. Hide. But maybe don't fight.
Oh, I'm down.
If you pay any kind of attention to the background footage in my videos, you may find that as a video game YouTuber, I'm not exactly great at video games.
What the fuck is happening? No way.
No!
Okay, so I'm good at games. I can hit headshots, I can clutch sometimes, but in comparison to most players, I get...
Wait, I have a shotgun, man. What am I doing? Oh, well, that's what I'm doing.
Well, I get shredded. You can really get an idea of what kind of player I am by looking at my hours. In recent memory, the majority of my time playing games in general have been in high stakes or high action shooter games, but overall, the game that I have absolutely played the most, maybe even across all platforms, is Garry's Mod. See, I'm a huge fan of the shooter genre, but I much prefer when it is utilized in creative ways. For this reason, I'm a huge fan of arc raiders. When you hear the term extraction shooter, it is often that you will immediately think of sweat-filled, 30-minute long lobbies that strictly force you into one of two categories: good at the game or dead. But Arc Raiders is not like this. See, it's the kind of game that rewards brains over brawn. This is most displayed through the use of things like jolt mines and fuse grenades. Even if you have trash weapons, you can outsmart your opponents with the materials that you have. Flush your opponents out with grenades, box them in with mines, slow them down with gas, disorient them with smoke. If you can do these things, even the best geared raiders can fall. But what if you don't have access to all these materials? Maybe you got unlucky with your free loadout. Maybe you used up all the gear earlier. Maybe you even forgot to bring any of it. Regardless of the situation, if all else fails in a fight, there's only one thing left to do: run. In video games, running can mean a lot of things, but its most common definition is, of course, fleeing from a combative situation with another player when given the opportunity. The more open a PvP game is, the more running is associated with this definition. So much so that we get labels like runner, a blanket term that seeks to identify players who will most often choose to run in these situations when provided with that choice. I happen to be one of the individuals who have been directly given this label, but only in games like Fortnite and Your Only Move is Hustle of all things, but I've also displayed the gameplay mannerisms that led to this label in almost every PvP game that I've played, like Hunt Showdown, Helldivers 2, all of the Halo games, and of course, Arc Raiders. See, I think there is an air of pride when it comes to this topic amongst players who play PvP, which, in many cases, can actually be beneficial for your gameplay experience. Hunt Showdown comes to mind when I think of a game that rewards confidence over timidness. However, in most games, you don't really lose anything by choosing to run, other than the potential reward that you may get from defeating another player. But if you don't really care about rank or in-game currency, then you don't really have anything to gain either, other than your life, or lives, that is. See, PvP games tend to try to evoke a certain emotion in their combat. This concept is most notably explored in Halo's 30 Seconds of Fun, the design philosophy that tries to get players to engage for a short but thrilling amount of time before ending the altercation, leaving whoever is still alive to have a small respite, which can build tension before the next engagement, getting players excited for, well, the thrill of the fight. The design philosophy of 30 Seconds of Fun was so impactful, it is present in almost every single PvP dominant game that you can think of. Think Call of Duty, Battlefield, Fortnite, Counter-Strike, Hunt Showdown, Escape from Tarkov, Arc Raiders, even single-player games like Ready or Not will follow the pipeline of short confrontation followed by tension building and repeat. However, this philosophy has had a unique byproduct, primarily present on games that take this approach in an open world or arena. See, those 30 seconds of pure adrenaline really only last however long any of the players survive, so whether by complete chance or by one of the player's intentions, these moments can last much longer. This can happen in many ways, such as both players being evenly matched in skill levels, or both players just somehow being on the same quote-unquote wavelength and predicting each other's moves perfectly. However, the method that I'm here to focus on in this video is through losing sight of your opponent. See, when this happens, you aren't completely taken out of the thrill of the fight, but you also aren't in complete adrenaline mode. You're somewhere in between these two states, leaving you with a feeling of partial excitement and partial fear. You're thrilled on one hand, but also terrified on the other. And if you know anything about video games, this might remind you of the feeling that a completely different genre of game is supposed to evoke: horror games. Now, the horror genre is very diverse. Some horror games are meant to scare you in a way most standard. Others are meant to evoke a deeper feeling of terror. But certain ones, particularly action horror, survival horror, and multiplayer horror games, will use the player's agency to create moments that are meant to be terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. One franchise that prides itself on moments like this is Resident Evil. Now, when you look at it from an outside perspective, Resident Evil is not all that scary. Like when you're watching a YouTube video, you watch Leon single-handedly dropkick 20 Hispanic zombies and wonder, wait, what genre of game is this? But there is a key difference between watching someone play and doing it yourself. Resident Evil has the unique ability to completely hijack the brain. As a member of the survival horror genre, it will constantly have you wondering about your inventory, your health, your ammo, your last save point, the guy with a giant chainsaw in front of you. Wait, what? And that's just a single situation. Games like Resident Evil will have you in a constant state of fear and excitement, half smiling, half terrified. It's a feeling that not every game captures perfectly, but when it does, it hits hard. Now, when PvP games work with the 30 seconds of fun philosophy, they essentially reverse engineer this feeling. They make the threat of another player so dangerous that the player by themselves create the entire feeling. So when I get away from that hostile raider in Arc Raiders, and I know they're probably chasing me down, I get that thrilling feeling of fear into adrenaline into excitement as I escape. A feeling that lasts much longer than the one that comes from an active engagement, and one that I personally prefer. And so with this, I implore you to play games in this way, which can primarily be achieved by playing as if you really don't want to quote-unquote die. With Arc Raiders, this is a lot easier, since your death is directly tied to you keeping everything in your inventory, but I also tend to do it a lot with games in which your death is really not that big of a deal, like Halo, The Finals, and a bunch of other games. You'll probably piss a few people off, and you'll definitely annoy a whole lot more, but in my experience, trust me, it's worth it. And now we've come to the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, and if you so wish, comment an experience that you have with this style of gameplay, as I would like to hear of the experiences of other people with this playstyle. Finally, if you enjoy my content enough that you would want to support it, you can buy something from this Amazon store, or you can subscribe to my Patreon for early access to my content sometimes, and a shout out. Speaking of, thank you to my first high-tier Patreon subscriber, Meow. Your name is Peak. And with all of that being said, thanks for watching, and goodbye.